Tiger fans, you're now tuned in to Tiger Rag Television, your source for the latest in LSU sports, in-depth game analysis, engaging interviews, and all things Tiger Nation. It's time to talk some LSU sports. Let's get ready for your Tiger Rag hosts, Jim Inkster, Chelsea Brumfield, Jeff Palermo, Ron Higgins, and Tyler Nunez.
I'm Jim Inkster, and welcome to Tiger Rag Television. A big show tonight as the Tigers head to Atlanta for the SEC Championship game against Georgia. Tiger Rag editor Ron Higgins, assistant editor Tyler Nunez, and Louisiana Network sports director Jeff Palermo will talk about it. In the face-to-face segment, it's John McCann. He played for Charlie McClendon's Tigers, became the head coach at McNeese, and in 1985, on the same staff with McCann at McNeese, were Coach O, Steve Ensminger, and Bill Johnson, all prominent members of this great LSU team. And we'll visit with Kevin Cope, the 36-year professor at LSU, who may be the most articulate man on the planet. He has some thoughts about football and LSU academics. And coming up in the crossfire, it's the Twin G, Glenn Guilbeau, on the relevance of the Southeastern Conference title. We're back after this pause.
Tiger Rag Crossfire.
This is Jim Inkster, and thank you for being with us for Tiger Rag Television. Our guest in the crossfire is the Twin G, Glenn Guilbeau, beat writer for LSU for the USA Today Network, featured columnist for Tiger Rag, and we're talking about the Southeastern Conference. It's time for the championship game in Atlanta. Glenn he'll be there, but this game for LSU purposes is not as meaningful as it is for Georgia. LSU's probably in the Final Four of the championship series. Georgia has to win. So is the SEC title just window dressing? Is it really important? What do you think, Glenn Guilbeau?
Sometimes it is window dressing. This year, from the LSU perspective, it's a nuisance because they're already in. Much like the first ever championship game, Alabama was undefeated. They had to play a 3-loss Florida, and if they'd have lost, they wouldn't have made the championship game. Tennessee, in 2001, it was a nuisance game. LSU upset them. Tennessee was going to go to the Rose Bowl had they won or not had the game, But now LSU in the past has needed it to get to the championship game, such as in 2007. They needed to win that day because there were some upsets around. 2011, they didn't need it. But it's significant in enough years to where it's still an interesting game, and it's still a game that you should have. I think it makes a lot of money too.
It makes a lot of money. You got to it. That's why we're having the SEC championship game in Atlanta. And some of us believe that only one team from the SEC should go to the Final Four, to the championship series. That would put a lot on the line. That'd put everything on the line. Why isn't this like the NFL, where you have a game of this magnitude and one team is in and the other is out?
Well, because you don't have a complete playoff yet in college. You have a step toward that. But there's just years where sometimes they should have two. And if Georgia won this year, it would be one of those years. But if LSU wins, there'll only be one SEC team in the four. But it's just not exactly correct and logical the way that college football does it, because they don't want to have that many games, but maybe they should.
Well, the SEC, Glenn, is all mixed up anyway because the championship is not equal. LSU plays Florida every year. Alabama plays Tennessee. Usually that's advantage Alabama. Why not just count the games within the division toward the conference division title and eliminate those games that are against the other division as conference games as far as actually counting? That way you would have a true divisional champion, the two division champions meet, and we'd have a real conference champion. Why not do it that way?
And still have the interdivision games? Oh, no, you can't do that because they will have played, and that those will affect the other rankings.
But we're talking about the championship of the Western Division and the Eastern Division. And that way you'd still have, 6 conference games, right? Yeah, 6 conference games that would count, but the others would not. And this is...
I don't think that would work.
Not unprecedented in a way. In 1967, LSU actually had a conference game against TCU. one of Charlie McClendon's 60 SEC wins was against TCU because it was designated as an SEC game.
Even though they weren't
even in the SEC. The SEC has been kind of mixed up in the way it handles champions.
It has.
And it's not a real champion. So the other thing is to have a situation where you eliminate some teams and you have a round robin where you play everybody, but you can't do that with 14 teams.
Well, I think the SEC is, they used to not even play the same number of games sometimes. And
that is true.
And they often don't even, they come far from playing as many games as they should. I remember Bo Schembechler used to make fun of the SEC because the Big Ten would play everybody. But no, I think, it's just a crazy thing. I don't know what you can do to fix it. But, now with the Final Four playoff, if they didn't have the SEC championship game this year, you would have two SEC teams in it, for sure, Georgia and LSU. So that really kind of hurts the league, and maybe the league ought to think about that if they can lose the money. Plus it gives your members a better chance of winning without having that game, because they get more rest, and it makes the path to the Final Four a little easier in some years, maybe most years.
But this is a weird scenario in which if LSU were to lose, unless they lose really badly, they're in the Final Four.
Right.
And in some ways, that could actually benefit them. For example, they could rest their whole team Saturday. Why are you laughing? Because Glenn Guilbeau, it could end up being that this would help LSU be tanned, rested, and ready for the Final Four.
Well, that would be a valid point if the playoff game was in a week or two, but it's actually 3 weeks away on December 28th.
Would you really be rested?
But you almost too rested.
I'll give you that, but you could end up having a guy get hurt. For example, if Burrow got hurt like Tua, and LSU went to the Final Four without Burrow, their chances of winning would be diminished, I would think, as good as Miles Brennan is.
Right. Well, and we don't even know if Miles Brennan will win the job next year.
But if Burrow goes down this time,
for sure. Guy. For sure, yeah, that's one of the risks of having a championship game when you already have teams in your conference that are going to make the playoff.
Now, Burrow just keeps piling up the numbers, and there's reason for him to conquer all the SEC single-season records.
Sure.
But he's got a long way to go. In 26 games, Johnny Manziel had 9,999 yards in total offense. Joe Burrow's got 7,907 in 25 games, so he needs 2,092 yards in the championship game, Glenn Guilbeau, to equal Johnny Manziel for total offense in 26 games. Can he do it?
No, but he can have a better NFL career than Johnny Manziel.
I think maybe you and I could have a better career in the NFL than Johnny Manziel.
Not off the field.
But he was the greatest SEC quarterback of all time.
I would say so. Probably so.
We're not supposed to agree. But I think Burrow is better than Peyton Manning, certainly better than Archie Manning, who had the worst record in the history of the National Football League when he was playing for the Saints.
Well, I don't know if Burrow is better
than Eli Manning.
Are you talking about their college career?
No, I'm talking about his prospects as a pro.
His prospects as a pro.
And this year, he's been better than those guys ever were for any given season.
Yeah, for one season, yes, I would say so. But, it's not all about yards. I mean, Archie could run, too. Now, the thing about Joe, like Ed said today, he could probably, he would be a great runner, but they don't want to do that yet. But I think you're right, though. I think Burrow will have a better NFL career than Johnny Manziel, than Eli Manning, and possibly better than Burt Jones. I don't know if he'll have Y.A. Tittle's career, but Peyton Manning had a heck of an NFL career. I don't know if he'll be on that level. But, if he's in that level, he's Hall of Fame.
Peyton's one of the top 5 of all time, but Burrow has that kind of potential. But as a runner, Johnny Manziel rushed for over 2,600 yards, 6.3 yards a carry, 30 touchdowns. Burrow, 3.0 yards per carry, 10 touchdowns, and 600 and some odd yards rushing in his career. He's not in the same league with Johnny as a runner as Johnny Football, and Johnny Football also threw for more yards and more touchdowns right now than Joe Burrow has in 25 games.
Well, the thing about Joe Burrow, and you can't really put a stat on this, he is incredibly accurate. If you watch him pass the ball,
amazing.
He puts it right there. He's a lot like Drew Brees, but bigger and thicker.
He's got it going, and I have a feeling that he'll be playing in Ohio next year at another level, and I think LSU will be proud that he played here, and he will be a Heisman Trophy winner.
If I was Mickey Loomis and the Saints win the Super Bowl this year, I would say, Drew Brees, thank you. Can you be a player coach and help us with Joe Burrow, and then trade everything they needed to trade to get
everything?
The draft
Remember
choice?
when they traded their whole draft for Ricky
I would
Williams?
do it. I would
You'd
do it for Joe Burrow. I would do it because you got the Super Bowl, and then
well, you're about to convince me, and we're not supposed to agree. But I like that idea, Glenn.
He would be great. He already knows the offense.
Well, thank you for joining us for Crossfire, Glenn Guilbeau, and we'll be back with more Tiger Rag Television after this timeout.
Welcome back to Tiger Rag Television. Jeff Palermo, News and Sports Director of the Louisiana Radio Network.
Tiger Rag Six-Pack.
Along with Tiger Rag editor Ron Higgins and assistant editor Tyler Nunez. It's time for the Tiger Rag Six-Pack. 6 hot-button questions for our guys. First of all, for Tiger Rag editor Ron Higgins, we finally saw a dominant performance from LSU's defense. Can we expect more of it in the postseason?
Well, I think so. I think they're kind of dialed in now. They've kind of figured some things out. They tried some new blitzes against Texas A&M, which worked great. Chase Young was all over the place. I thought they got a good, basically a bull rush toward the quarterback and collapsed the pocket. I think if they're coming together at the right time here, I really liked what I saw the other night.
I think it also helps who they're going to be playing in their next game here. And Georgia's going to be without DeAndre Swift, or if they do have him, he'll be a little bit hobbled. They will be without their top 2 wide receivers, at least for the first half. And I think that Georgia's kind of been anemic on offense throughout the course of this season. So I think that with Jake Fromm struggling and a lack of options for him to throw to, I think it's going to help LSU's defense much in the way it did against the Texas A&M offense that wasn't very explosive.
All right, question number 2 for the Tiger Rag Six-Pack. You mentioned it, Tyler. Georgia seems like they're coming into the SEC championship game a little bit wounded. Their top running back might not play. They're not going to have one of their top wide receivers for the first half of the game. But what is LSU's biggest concern going into this game, you think?
They got to protect Joe Burrow. That's going to be a really difficult thing to do. Georgia's got an excellent defensive line, and they run a 3-4 defense that's really good at getting to the quarterback. Limiting turnovers is going to be paramount to winning this game and kind of building a lead that Georgia can't surmount. And to do that, they're going to have to protect Joe Burrow and limit his options to make bad decisions.
Well, I think it's making life miserable for Jake Fromm. He's not a great athletic scrambler. He's going to be sitting in the pocket. They need to get to him. Also, I think offensively, LSU needs to adjust pretty quickly to what Georgia is trying to do. One of LSU's secrets this year has been the way it has adjusted during games and how quick they do it and how quick they figure things out. And once they do that, they kind of get on a roll. So I think those 2 things are what I'm looking for.
Question number 3 for the Tiger Rag Six-Pack. We saw last week LSU was highly motivated to beat Texas A&M, and they certainly did. Now, Georgia, do they have a little payback for LSU after losing in Tiger Stadium last year? Do you think the Bulldogs can rev it up a little bit as far as looking back at what happened last season?
I think it's a different team, a different time. I don't think Georgia offensively is as good as last year. Their receivers, even if they're healthy, certainly aren't very good. They're not deep at running back like they were. This is a different time, and honestly, they're looking at a different LSU offense they haven't seen. Georgia plays offense like LSU used to, kind of plotting, huddles, or if there's no huddle, it's very slow-paced. But I don't think Georgia's looking at last year's motivation. They're looking at it right now. And as far as LSU, they're looking at it right now. Even though they won last year, they're not taking this game for granted.
I think I disagree. I think there's going to be some bulletin board material from last year's game. LSU went out there and kind of stomped and embarrassed Georgia in a game that everyone kind of expected Georgia to go in there and handle, and LSU's fans stormed the field. I think there's a lot of players who remember that, including Jake Fromm, who wants to go there and get one back on Joe Burrow. I think they're going to have a tough time of it. This is an LSU offense that embarrassed them last year, and they're bounds better this year. So, but that being said, I think there's some players on that team that would like to get that one back.
Question number 4 for the Tiger Rag Six-Pack. We're seeing it more and more, especially with LSU's high-tempo offense. Can the NCAA or college football do anything about these fake injuries that we're seeing from the defensive players to try to slow down these offenses that want to go up-tempo?
It's going to be really difficult. This isn't the first time the NCAA has kind of faced something like this. We saw it back when Oregon was running a similar style of offense and teams were doing that against them about 5 or 6 years ago. I think it's just a tough situation because the one time you get it wrong, the one time it looks like a guy's faking it and he's actually injured, you're opening yourself up to a lot of criticism and maybe even some lawsuits. I don't know that there's a really clean answer to this. It's obviously something they have to look at and try to figure out, but I don't know what the answer to that is.
Lord Almighty, the other night I thought the A&M players were getting shot by snipers. Holy moly, it's just falling over like they've been hit. They recovered after 20, 30 seconds miraculously. They walked off the field. You had to feel good about that. I don't know what you can do about it unless you have just one ref devoted in the press box to watch whether guys just fall down on their own or not. I don't know how you police that.
Yeah, it's a tough one for the NCAA. Question number 5 for the Tiger Rag 6-pack. We have 3 openings in the SEC. You have Missouri, Arkansas, Ole Miss. Which one is the best coaching job?
Wow.
Yeah, it's tough.
It is tough. I mean, you're looking at 3 really bad recruiting areas. As far as getting, Arkansas, you have to go into Oklahoma and Texas and recruit. There's not much in Arkansas. Missouri, not much there. Mississippi has great talent, but a lot of it's ineligible, and because of the ACT scores in Mississippi, Mississippi's had the lowest ACT score average nationally probably for the last 30 or 40 years. Well, that's a tough one. That's like they all hit the finish tape at the same time on that one. I can't pick one.
I'm kind of stuck between Missouri and Ole Miss here. I think Ole Miss has the advantage in recruiting, but Missouri's got a really solid program. And not too long ago, if you remember, they were in an SEC championship game. So I think I'm going to edge towards Missouri. I think it's a little bit easier to win in the SEC East, and I think they have a little bit of edge in recruiting as well.
I agree with you, Tyler. I think it's a little easier in the SEC East, and maybe you have a chance in Missouri to go down to Texas and get some guys. And if you get a good quarterback, play a little spread offense, you got a chance just like Gary Pinkel did a couple of years ago. All right, question number 6 for the Tiger Rag 6-pack. How vital is it for LSU to be the top seed when the 4 teams are unveiled next Sunday?
I personally think it's very vital. I don't think that LSU wants to play Clemson in the semifinals. I think Clemson is an excellent team who has an offense, one of the only offenses that can go toe-to-toe with LSU. They've also got a lot of defensive talent, but between Trevor Lawrence and Jennings native Travis Etienne, I got to say that LSU probably wants to avoid playing Clemson and wants to get that 4 seed in that first round.
I kind of agree. I think they don't want to play Clemson. There's too much talent over there. They've been in this game too many times. It's not they're not intimidated by the big stage. I like their offense. Travis Etienne from Louisiana is a great running back, and they just got athletes all over on defense. So I agree with Tyler. I not want to play them the first round.
It would be amazing for LSU to have this special season, go 12-0, win the SEC championship, play Clemson in that semifinal round, lose, and have the season over by January 1st. It almost would feel a little empty in a sense. We'll find out Sunday when the 4 teams are unveiled for the college football playoff. We'll take a break. More of Tiger Rag Television when we come back.
This is Jim Inkster, and welcome back to Tiger Rag Television. Our interview segment this week is a special one with Coach John McCann. Many of you will remember him as a coach at McNeese State. He also was a 3-year letterman on some of the best teams that Charlie McClendon ever produced at LSU from 1968 to 1970. Played offensive guard at about 230 pounds. He's still at about 230, and he is a guy who knows Coach O very well. He knows Bill Johnson, the defensive line coach, very well. And you know Steve Ensminger probably better than any of them.
That's right.
And in 1985, all 3 of these prominent members of the LSU staff, including the head coach, they were all assistants to you at McNeese State. Now, how the heck did that happen?
Well, Steve was already there. Steve was at Nicholls State with a mutual friend of ours, Sonny Jackson, who had one of the all-time best records at Nicholls State. And Steve came with me to McNeese and put him in charge of offense and quarterbacks, and he was already there. And he knew Bill. And Bill was ready to make a move from Northwestern in Natchitoches. And Bill and I talked on the phone, and Bill came down for a visit, and I hired Bill. After hiring Bill, one day Bill was in the office and said, I have a guy you need to talk to. And I said, who is that? And he said, Bebe Orgeron. I said, who? He said, never heard of the guy. Bill said, he's a great guy. He's from down the bayou, you know, he's our kind of people and all that. So we got together and talked, and he came on board with us as a graduate assistant coach that year.
Amazing that these three prominent members of this staff were with you 34 years ago at McNeese State, and we're talking about maybe the three most prominent coaches. There is a defensive coordinator we'd have to consider in that realm, but they are all doing exceptionally well, and some might say were the proverbial late bloomers.
Well, they all have endured. The coaching business is a rough business. You got to be. Bum Phillips always said, you know, you got to be ready to move, and there's only two types of coaches: those that have been fired and those that are going to get fired. So these guys have really persevered in this business. They've made the moves they needed to make. They've just persevered and worked hard, and you know, stayed connected with people over the years. And of course, my partiality, of course, is to Steve. He's like family. Steve's purple and gold through and through. He's a loyal LSU guy, and it's just wonderful to see all this come together this way. It's almost like a dream to see those three guys out on the field like we saw them Saturday night, and I just get chills when I see Steve walk through the goalpost, and Nan will ask me, "Where's Steve? Where's Steve?" And I'll point him out when he's out there working with the quarterbacks. But it's just wonderful to watch everything that's come together for those guys. They're all great people, great competitors. And Bebe, Coach O just deserves all the credit for having that vision of what he wanted that offense to be.
Well, you and I remember when Charlie Mack was forced out, and he was 56 years old, and the game had supposedly passed him by. Well, Coach O is 58, Steve Ensminger is 61, and Coach Johnson is 64 years old. And
correct.
They've got a lot of gas in the tank.
I know Steve has. Steve's high energy, great, one of the best competitors I've ever been around. And he's loyal to the core, and he's an LSU guy. And so he subverted his own personal, whatever ambition may be or whatever, to do what's best for the Tigers this year, and they've made it work.
Now, you played for Charlie McClendon, and I'm relatively sure Coach McCann has more college wins than any of Coach Mack's proteges.
Yes.
At McNeese, you had some very good years.
Well,
and ironically, Coach Mack produced more doctors and lawyers than he did football coaches.
There were not very many coaches. There were only a few people in the coaching profession that had played for Coach Mack: Barry Wilson, Nelson Stokely, and myself, and a couple of others. But there were Lynn Amity, who made quite a few visits to different locations around the country in his career. But there were not a lot of Mack disciples that went into the coaching business.
Well, Coach Stokely, of course, who you played with.
Yes.
He had a great career at Clemson as an offensive coordinator. They won a national title, and
With
then he
Danny
lasted a long time at USL,
Right.
and died tragically at dementia at a young age. That's something that's happened to more than a few guys from your era. How did you avoid that?
Well, the research is still on about that, what causes it. There may be some relationship to blows that you receive during competitive athletics. We lost another quarterback, Buddy Lee from Zachary, passed away from that same malady.
A quarterback.
A quarterback. And you don't think a quarterback's getting beat up too much, but Nelson was a great athlete. Nelson was partially responsible for Mack's two-quarterback system because his knee went out on him in the warm-up one night, and he couldn't play. And when the players found out he had previously hurt that knee, when the players went into the dressing room after warm-ups and they told them that Nelson couldn't play, it deflated the team. Mack said never again would that happen to him. And that had a lot to do with him playing two quarterbacks every year.
He did it all through his career. He did it with Ensminger and David Woodley.
Correct.
He also did it with Buddy Lee and Burt Jones.
Yes, he did.
His only SEC title was your senior year, 1970. And you played with Buddy Lee, who had a good year, and Burt Jones, who was a 18-year-old sophomore. And
great arm.
Great arm. Is it true he could throw the ball the length of the field?
I saw him throw it out of Tiger Stadium, standing on the field, and he threw it over the top of the stadium.
Really?
Yes.
Burt Jones.
Burt Jones. He had a great arm. Al Coffey was a sprinter on the track team, played football for us. Al ran about 9.4 100-yard dash.
I know.
But one day after practice, he told Al, take off.
Yeah.
And he threw it so far. I mean, Al was on the other side of the field, on about the opposition 20-yard line when he caught it.
What about the current quarterback? What do you think of him?
Fantastic. I mean, he's such a competitor. You can see why the guys on the team play so hard for him, because he sets an example. He'll do whatever it takes to win, and he's really a good leader on the field.
Now, you coached many years. Do you still get those competitive juices going when you see a game?
When I'm at the game, I zero in on it, and I'm trying to watch things. Of course, as Steve told me last summer, we had a reunion of sorts last summer, and he looked at me and said, Coach, it's changed. He said, it's not the same game. And that's before we rolled out the whole entire new offense this year. And he was right.
Well, the players look a lot different. At 2:30, you wouldn't get out of the locker room.
Wouldn't get a look.
No.
Right.
And you were a pretty big guy. You were one of the biggest guys on the team, weren't you?
Mike Anderson was the biggest guy on our defense, and Mike weighed about 228, played linebacker.
Middle linebacker,
Right, yeah.
That defense of Charlie McClendon was always notable, and in 69 and 70, I don't think they allowed a rushing touchdown.
They allowed one. The last game against Tulane, they gave up 37 yards game rushing, and there was a movement by a tight end, and we played old Tulane Stadium, and Lloyd Fryer was playing over him, and Lloyd did what your coach did, and when he moved, he grabbed him. And the referees huddled up, and they called offsetting penalties. They gave him one more down, and they scored. Coach Mack was not happy.
No, the only rushing touchdown for a whole season. I mean,
a whole year.
A whole year,
And they weren't very big.
Yeah.
But they were great.
Well, that 69 team only lost once.
Yes.
It may have been the best team LSU's had up until this one.
Yes, it was one of the better ones, and of course, the guy we admire very much, who's in the Louisiana Hall of Fame, Archie Manning, beat us in Jackson, 26-23, almost single-handedly, because other than that, they were like 7-3 that year. He had a very average team.
Now, I've had more than a few players on that team say that Coach Mack blamed the loss on the fact that the team saw Easy Rider the night before. Is that true?
Well, he was not happy with the selection. He thought it was a Western, and he was unhappy with the team captains who he thought had misled him about the subject matter in the movie.
So they went.
So we'll leave it at that.
Easy Rider, which was on Halloween, by the way, of '69, the 10-year anniversary of Billy Cannon's run.
That's correct.
And lost to Archie Manning after leading 23-12.
That's right. That's right. And he never forgot that movie. And he thought he liked us to see a good Western, and he loved John Wayne. But this was not a Western.
No, Dennis Hopper and
Peter Fonda.
Peter Fonda. No, that was not
Jack Nicholson.
Film. Yeah,
right.
It was the movie that made Jack Nicholson, much of which was filmed here in Louisiana.
They just observed that anniversary in Morganza. Where they filmed it.
It's 50 years. And 50 years, unbelievably, since that team of '69. Now, 50 years from now, are we going to be talking about Joe Burrow the same way we're talking about Billy Cannon after all these years since he last played?
Well, probably so, because if he wins the Heisman, I mean, that'll only be our second Heisman winner. Of course, I always thought Stovall should have won it in '62. And Terry Baker won it from Oregon.
You know your stuff, yeah.
I don't know where did Terry Baker play after that, but Jerry was a great athlete.
And he played 9 years in the NFL.
That's right.
Terry Baker was also a starting guard for the Oregon State basketball team.
I didn't know that.
Which beat UCLA and John Wooden for the championship.
Yeah, I didn't know.
He was a great athlete,
yeah.
but Stovall should have won the Heisman.
I think so.
He did everything.
Yeah, he was a punter, ran back kicks. He ran back kickoff against Colorado one year. He could run the ball, and it was a great defensive back.
Now, you're a Baton Rouge guy, right?
Yes, sir.
So I'm sure it was a great thrill for you to play.
Oh, yes. I was in New Orleans visiting my senior year when I was playing at Catholic High. Got a phone call and said, we'd like to invite you to come to the game and be on the sideline as a recruit. And we drove right back to Baton Rouge. Changed the plans.
And you stayed a while and did well.
Yes.
And came back to Baton Rouge.
And I was a graduate assistant one year with Coach Mack, sat in the booth with Charlie Peavy and Scooter Purvis and gained a lot of experience and a lot of great people.
And for those unfamiliar, Coach McCann's wife is Nanette, who is the principal at Baton Rouge High, one of the
Baton
great
Rouge
high
Magnet
schools.
High School. Great
Great
school.
school. Well,
Yeah.
and she at one time was national principal of the year.
Absolutely.
Coach McCann, thank you very much.
Thank you,
and,
Jim.
We'll see you soon.
Enjoyed it.
And we'll be back with more Tiger Rag Television after this brief time out. I'm Jim Inkster, and we're glad you're watching Tiger Rag Television, and we're visiting with Kevin Cope, one of the longest tenured LSU professors. For a decade, he was president of the LSU Faculty Senate. He's an authority on Beowulf and professional wrestling, and occasionally he goes to an LSU football game, and the Tigers doing well on the gridiron is usually good for the whole state. Everybody's happy. There's a spring in your step, I can tell it. Can you feel the palpitations on campus?
Oh, well, I feel a certain vibration. Now, it's interesting that you say it's good for the whole state. You know, Louisiana has one of the lowest income levels, but one of the highest happiness levels. So you can put that contradiction together and come up with what you think about it. But I would suggest that that indicates that maybe people are measuring things not quite in the right way, including the influence of football.
Well, football is king in Louisiana, there's no doubt, and when LSU is number one, the whole state is on a high. And I imagine even those impressionable students who haven't been jaded yet are exceptionally happy about what's happening on the football field at Tiger Stadium.
This is true, but dare I suggest that there is a state of mind that might be better than happiness or delirium, and that might be clarity of thought and rationality. Nevertheless, what you report is true as a matter of fact.
Well, Kevin Cope, as I mentioned, was head of the Faculty Senate for a decade. During that time, you had some battles with presidents of the university, chancellors, and one of them is King Alexander, who fired a faculty member a few years ago, Dr. Teresa Buchanan, after she used foul language in the classroom. And you made the statement, and now it has been verified, that football coaches might occasionally use foul language. So should a football coach who uses the F word be fired unceremoniously, Kevin Cope?
If the university is in any business, it is in the business of consistency and consistency over time. Now, I will say that it's probably you with your secret methods that have verified the use of scatological language on the field. I would, however, very much enjoy positioning a drone over one of our practice gridirons to ascertain whether maybe some of those naughty words that led to that dismissal occasionally popped up, maybe in the vicinity of the end zone.
You think there's hypocrisy that a football coach or a basketball coach, any coach, can use foul language, and the professor in the classroom loses her gig? She was a tenured professor, wasn't she?
Well, that's right. And hypocrisy is, of course, one of those four-syllable words which is outside the official vocabulary of many public educators, because we're all supposed to make things very accessible. Nevertheless, once again, with your incredible acuity, you have hit the old nail right on the head. That is, this is, in a four-syllable word, hypocrisy.
But football winning is usually good anywhere that relies on football, like the University of Alabama, where more than half the student body is now from other states. If Coach O gets this going, wins a national title or two or three, can you see LSU as a university benefiting from people coming in and spending money and the budget being better than it has been?
Well, here I'm going to shock you in a couple of ways. One is, of course, the statisticians tell us that the budget of the university goes up directly in relation to success on the football field. There's no denying that. On the other hand, an occasion like this is an opportunity to reflect on a couple of things. One of them is that maybe this is not the best way to finance the project of higher education. That is, football has had its problem, everything ranging from long-term injuries for students to racial inequity, people in the stadium being of one race and people on the field being of another race, ecological impact. Think of the carbon footprint every time that big van drags all of that equipment to some other stadium or other. So is this the way to finance education that is consistent with its mission? I don't know. I have a tendency to think maybe not. The other way I'm going to shock you is that not all of that money ever reaches the academic side of the university. The athletic department talks a lot about the money that it gives, but a lot of what it gives actually just purchases services that are helpful to football. So there's another little bit of hypocrisy as well, but use your favorite vocabulary builder of the day.
Well, football and basketball are king in a lot of places, and in 39 states, a college football or basketball coach is the highest paid public official in that state, including Louisiana. So is it true that not only at LSU, but maybe in a lot of places, we want a university the football team can be proud of, Dr. Cope?
Well, those are two separate questions. The question arises, can we get that football team that we're proud of by some other means than by paying the coach roughly 100 to 150 times the median salary of a wage earner in Louisiana? If a presidential candidate made that much money, the very people who supported him or her would be up in arms. So why is it that the football coach enjoys such an exemption from public criticism?
Well,
or to get it down to one syllable, the answer to your question is no. That's probably not the best way to get a winning football team.
but 102,000 people and a few others show up every Saturday night when LSU plays in Death Valley, and occasionally even Kevin Cope is there to watch the Tigers. And not many occupations would draw 100,000 people.
Well, that's true, but is that the right measure to apply? After all, Liberace and Michael Jackson and Freddie Mercury, they've all drawn 100,000 people. Do you want them to head up either a football team or university?
They make more than these football coaches. You mentioned some people who are dead, in fact, all three of them. But for those who think that this guy is the ultimate cynic, Kevin Cope, when he was a young kid in San Diego, before he went off to Harvard, he used to sneak into the Los Angeles sports arena, right? To see
I didn't
professional wrestling?
I didn't sneak in. In the words of Freddie Blassie, I only sit in the loge seats. That is, I had a genuine ticket, but you're right. I frequented two big arenas on the West Coast, the San Diego Coliseum, now destroyed, and the Olympic Auditorium in downtown Los Angeles with the NWA wrestling circuit.
Who are some of your faves?
Oh, certainly my favorite year in and year out was classy Freddie Blassie. He was a person who provided a good role model. I liked John the Golden Greek Tolos, and I was a really big fan of Bull Ramos, a tremendously overweight gentleman from the Southwest who carried the bullwhip and who got the job done.
He knows professional wrestling as well as he knows Beowulf, and not many people can say that. But why have you stayed at LSU for 36 years? This man who has a PhD from Harvard came here when you were 25, I think.
26.
Okay.
Yeah,
you stayed here for 36 years and counting.
Well, that's it. It may be because I'm unemployable elsewhere. That is, my line of work is commenting on LSU. But setting that aside, I would say that Louisiana State University is unusual in that although it has tremendous deficits, including some in the administration, it nevertheless has always provided a lot of opportunity for me. Now, we're at a very critical time, and it would be nice if we could flush some of that football money back, or at least find some other way to get to it, such as ending the revenue pools across the SEC so that there was more local control over the money, so that we in academia and also the people knew how it was being spent. But by and large, it's not been the worst 36 years.
Well, we're glad you stayed the course. And Dr. Cope, thanks for being with us today.
And thank you, Jim.
And we'll be back with more Tiger Rag Television after this pause.
Predictions.
Back on Tiger Rag Television, Jeff Palermo, News and Sports Director of the Louisiana Radio Network, along with Tiger Rag editor Ron Higgins and assistant editor Tyler Nunez. Time to make our picks for Championship Saturday. We'll actually start with the game that will be played on Friday. That's Utah versus Oregon, as this will be the Pac-12 Championship. Utah is a 6-point favorite, Ron.
Utah's been pretty consistent all year. In fact, in the last couple of weeks, they've been talked about as far as sneaking into that fourth position. I mean, you had some roadblocks in front of them, but Alabama got removed this past weekend by Auburn. I really like, for some reason, I like Utah on this one. I think they've played pretty consistent and well all year. Oregon's lost early, kind of come back some, and Oregon's had more experience in this game that might work against Utah, but I think Utah is kind of on a mission.
Utah is on a mission, but I'm going to go with the upset alert on this one. I think Oregon's got a really solid team. I think they're playing for some pride, and after kind of ruining their chances at making the college football playoff, they want to keep it sounds antithetical, but they probably want to keep their Pac-12 rival out of the college football playoff, and the Pac-12 seems to find a way to stay out of the playoff most years anyway. So I'm going to go with Oregon in this game. I think they're a really well-rounded team that can go in there and get a win.
I agree with Ron. I think Utah's been the more consistent team down the stretch. But if Oregon pulls off the upset, that means the Big 12 game is going to be a huge contest. You have Baylor versus Oklahoma. The Sooners are an 8-point favorite, Tyler.
I'm going with Baylor in this one as well. Again, another upset alert. I think that Baylor came out, they jumped out to a 28-3 lead. They blew it much like the Falcons in the Super Bowl. I think they really want to get this one back, and they might even earn their way into a college football playoff. They've played really good and inspired football all season long. They had a chance to beat Oklahoma, and they let it slip through their fingers. I don't think they let it happen again.
This is one of the great stories of college football this year. Baylor, a couple of years ago, they were just down and out after all the Art Briles scandal, and this program was in the dumpster. They came back where they are right now, and they're playing great football. But Boomer Sooner, Jalen Hurts has played pretty good all year. Oklahoma's very experienced these games, but if Baylor won, I'd like it. I just think that they've played great all year. I really like that team.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch Baylor, but I think Oklahoma finally puts together the complete game, gets the job done, and they win this game, and they get the spread, too, by 8. All right, let's go to the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State, 16.5-point favorite against Wisconsin. Can the Badgers keep up with the Buckeyes, Ron?
No, they're all about handing the ball off and running, and there's not much there with Wisconsin. I'm not going to say this is almost like a bye game for Ohio State, but they're going to go out and put some points up on this one just to try to ensure they get that #1 seed.
Yeah, I'm with Ron on this one. There was a point in this season where I thought Wisconsin had the best defense in the country. Turns out that wasn't legit. Ohio State has a much better defense, and on top of that, one of the most explosive offenses in the country. This one will not be close, Ohio State.
All right, LSU is a 7.5-point favorite to beat Georgia. I like LSU to cover, guys. They have to make a statement, and Georgia just seems beat up coming into this game. What do you think?
LSU opened up as a 4.5-point favorite, and so many people have bet on LSU that line's already moved 3 points in the span of a day. I think LSU is a huge favorite in this game because nobody thinks that Georgia can outscore this LSU offense. I think there's a lot of legitimacy to that claim. I have a hard time seeing a pathway to victory for Georgia. I think LSU wins and covers.
I think LSU wins and covers too. I mean, this is a game where I still think LSU feel like it has to prove something. That's probably the best thing that's happened to LSU all year is that kind of like every week they get a little disrespect or they perceive they get disrespect. It's been a great motivating factor for them. And I can see, Georgia hasn't given up very many points, given like 10 points a game. I can see LSU winning this one by like 13 or 14 points. I think LSU's in the mid to upper 30s on this one.
Well, if LSU wins by just a couple touchdowns, I don't know if that will be enough to convince the committee to move them up to #1, especially if Ohio State beats up on Wisconsin pretty good. That's our picks for Championship Saturday. More of Tiger Rag Television when we come back.
Thanks for watching Tiger Rag Television. We'll find out this week, Saturday, how the Tigers do against Georgia in Atlanta in the SEC Championship game, and then we'll know where LSU will be seated in the Final Four for the National Championship. Can the Tigers win their first title in a dozen years? We're about to find out. We'll follow it every step of the way right here with Tiger Rag, the Bible of LSU sports. See you next week.
Mm-hmm.